Is that unmuted? Yeah, perfect. Welcome, afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start the webinar in a second, just making sure one or two final checks, making sure everything's good to go. And we are green. So let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. As I said, thank you for joining the webinar this afternoon. Thanks for your time and congratulations on making the time to find out how you could work better with Salesforce and many other systems. My name is Daniel Lawrence and I work at Bots for That. Got the clicker. So what we do at Bots for That is make work less work using smart automation bots. And we build these bots so that we can take on all those boring manual tasks so that people no longer have to. And with just about one of our bots handling roughly the equivalent workload of, that was completely natural, roughly the equivalent workload of 3 to 4 people, one of our bots can save you time, boost the productivity of your people and your business. And more forward-thinking businesses are starting to use bots like this now so that they can challenge the status quo and start working smarter instead of harder. Or as one of our customers likes to put it, work sucks, so we got bots and we moved on, which is my favorite thing. So with so much great tech available to us today, why is there still so much manual work? Well, modern systems like Salesforce are great, they're brilliant, they're transforming how and where we can do work. But very often, their greatest strengths, i.e. their ease of access and their ease of use, can also be their most annoying weaknesses because they're ultimately designed for us to interact with and use manually. And this genericness creates application gaps, or what I call app gaps. These are when the system you're using just doesn't do exactly what you want, when or how you want it to, or it doesn't connect to other systems or data in the way that you need them to. And companies like Salesforce do everything they can to give users exactly what they want, but there's a limit on how much their products can give every user exactly what they need. So, what can help eliminate manual work on systems like Salesforce? Well, Salesforce and many other companies have done a great job in building user-led communities and ecosystems like the Salesforce App Exchange, for example. That gives users a way to really extend what they can use the applications for, but they're not always as good as we'd like, and sometimes they can work out a bit more expensive than we'd like too. So what else? Well, there's effectively the development approach is the standard go-to where you bring in a programmer who can spend time designing and building a very unique and very customized automation or integration. And that will fix a very unique problem for you. But the price of that approach can be quite high, and it can also take sometimes a long time to do properly. Plus, it's a very unique deliverable in itself. It only does that one thing. And as things always change, you may eventually not need that thing at all. So what else is there? There's one other way that you may not have considered yet, and that's bots, automation bots, which are fast, smart, scalable, powerful, and can be also very much lower cost. And in this webinar, I'm going to share some insights with you into how businesses, maybe even your competitors today, are using bots to eliminate manual work in Salesforce, and in some cases, way, way beyond that too. So when I talk to users of Salesforce and ask them what their biggest frustrations with using the system are, I get a very common set of answers. In actual fact, the answers are fairly identical from users of other systems too. And those top 3 issues are data integration, data reporting or lack of, and data duplication. So they're the main 3 issues that come up time and again. So if you think about it for a second, the 3 most common issues that users have using Salesforce and other systems is getting the data in, keeping the data clean, and then reporting the data out, which is pretty much everything we use systems for. And those 3 issues are causing a lot of manual workload. But it's actually, I guess, not that surprising. I read somewhere else the other day that the average person will apparently spend about 22 years of their life online. And unfortunately, I don't think most of those 22 years are not spent binge watching your favorite shows. So it's generally speaking, a lot of those boring, repetitive, mundane tasks. But thankfully, there is a better way, a way to free up your time, a way to reduce part of that 22 years sentence and eliminate some repetitive processes using Salesforce and all other kinds of systems too. So let's take a look at those 3 main issues one at a time. First, with the integration and data entry. So it's a very typical example of this is when you need to add or update existing records, and you find you have to do this manually. You may even have to import data from, say, using an Excel or a CSV file. There's lots of reasons this might be the case. For example, you might just you might not have the records that you want in suitable form. You might not have a decent, suitable connection or a native connection, like an API for the systems you're using. But you might not even have the license level, or you might, in my case, for example, you might use a Mac instead of a PC, and you run into problems there running the import wizard. And what you don't want to do is end up with a total mess that you only have to spend more time fixing. So the bottom line is it happens, and it will continue to happen. So what you need is a quick, elegant solution that works and doesn't create more work by going wrong. A good example that I've got of this is one of our customers where they have to extract sales order details every day on an end-day basis to drive invoicing into Xero. Simple enough in theory, but they're like many other businesses, they've got a fairly complex business model. They've got fairly complex product lines and service lines and pricing, and they often change. And these need quite a lot of manipulation to get all the data they need from Salesforce over into Xero to calculate the correct invoices. And they want to do all of that without taking hours and days of someone's time. So when they first introduced us to the process, it was taking, on average, up to 5 people 2 working weeks to complete that entire process. But the bots were able to complete everything in just 3 hours, the same amount of work, saving them all of the time and getting the invoices out the door up to 2 weeks faster. And this is one of the things that the CFOs love, because it then improves the cash flow too, which is pretty important, especially in these current times. In terms of data entry and integration, there's nothing really that a bot couldn't do when it comes to getting data into or out from Salesforce to other systems, or actually multiple systems at the same time, for that fact. This slide shows a few of those common systems that work very well. So, for example, you've got Google Spreadsheets, email, LinkedIn, DocuSign, Slack, email. The list goes on, but these are some of the most common ones that we find in practice. Next up is data quality. Again, another very common complaint, no matter who I talk to about any particular system. Salesforce no exception, but most businesses struggle with identifying and cleaning up bad data, especially data errors and duplicates, which are probably the most common of the issues that I see about. In fact, one special case that we do have, we have a bot that uses algorithms that were programmed to automatically search through hundreds and thousands of records in real time to identify any of those possible duplicates, and then also to handle those duplicates. And once I say handling, it can then do the merging, disabling or deleting, and then keeping a record of all of those changes too. It can save customers hours and hours and hours of manual work, and also helps with regulatory compliance if you're in one of those more regulated industries. Another example of ours is another customer is having some data quality problems in their customer contact center. And because they've got very high customer volumes and they've got very tight case handling targets, the team's generally always rushing, always working through backlogs, and as a result, always have high error rates. It meant that they had to spend time finding the errors first. Unfortunately, sometimes the customer did that for them, which isn't great. And then they had to correct those errors and then review them or QA them for making sure there weren't any further errors perpetuated. So all of that takes time, resource, and costs the business. But with bots, they were able to take a 2-stage approach to fixing this. First, they used a bot that worked through the backlog and cleaned up all of the backlog of data and issues that they had. And then secondly, they had bots that were deployed to manage the new data processing and then prevent more bad data coming back into the system in future. Again, bots can connect with multiple systems to ensure that your data quality is maintained and synchronized across all your different systems. And lastly, the third of our top pain points is reporting. And this is one that probably tops the polls across all of the different pain points that get raised. And that's because we all have very different needs and requirements, whether it's the industry or the vertical that we work in, or the size of our business. It could be our goals and priorities. It could just be our individual preferences. But these all add up to causing reporting challenges for any system and its users. And what we generally end up with is a set of generic downloads. Those, let's face it, sometimes it may be a configured dashboard if we've got the ability to do so, but we generally end up then having to dump the data out, put it into Excel, and then create manually the reports that we want to. Carry on there, Karen. But that's far from ideal, and it's not, generally speaking, the spreadsheet skills that you need to do that really well. Sorry, we've got to come on the screen. Sorry, small technical issue. We've got a TV's about to shut down. Sorry, folks, just a small technical problem with the television. As I was saying, sometimes you can't get the skills. But yeah, as I say, manually taking data out of different systems, putting it into Excel, manipulating that, the skills that you need to do that really well, and often enough, sometimes aren't that common. The approach that you can take using a bot, however, is to standardize the production of the reports, but not standardize and restrict the insights that people can get from the data. Another good example of this, and the customer of ours are a professional training company, and their client services team have to create and publish reports every day for their clients, especially their tier 1 clients who all want to see different types of data reported differently. This is quite a huge undertaking for their client services team, which required all these overnight downloads that were all queued up, which very often failed or were cut short because of the thousands of rows of data that were in some of the final reports. But ultimately, the net result was a flurry of activity every single morning, trying to pull together all these various reports in different data spreadsheets. And of course, that frequently didn't happen on time to meet the deadlines that they had. But they were able to deploy a bot that could run the reports as it needed, and then automatically create customized spreadsheet reports and format them for each client's needs, and then distribute them as well, send them out via email or via a file system. And that way, the clients had the reports with everything they needed in the way they wanted it, first thing in the morning. Well, what the bot also had to accommodate was different kinds of parameters that the clients wanted. And it could be very simple things like formatting the order of the rows and the sequence of columns. And all those sets of variables could be changed by either the client services team or by the clients themselves. They could be very easily modified. And also then it didn't mean that the bot didn't need to be changed at all, so it could just basically run as it was anticipated. We tend to call that sort of approach is change everything without changing anything type of a solution. So bots can be used to do not only eliminate the top 3 pain points, but to eliminate lots of other manual work using Salesforce. For example, got some things on the board. Bots can be used in sales to automate follow-ups and searches and sales orders, and sales quotes, but also in customer services to look after requests and updates, especially where chat is involved, where bots they very seamlessly interact with the chat platform, the agent and the customer to automatically handle and pass requests without the need for an agent to get involved unless they absolutely need to. Bots can also be used in marketing to manage leads and campaigns, and then also for general Salesforce admin to set up, onboard and offboard new users and leavers. So all types of tasks that are manual and repetitive. But the real advantage of a bot is that they're not restricted to any type of activity. We have bots, for example, that can work through Salesforce sales orders in the morning, then switch over and start working through invoices in Xero or Sage in the afternoon before switching over to work on payroll or accounts or something else completely different. And then it can run through the day and through the night as needed. And that's the great thing is because bots effectively can be shown to perform really any kind of task. And of course, they work 24/7, 365, no vacation, no sick, just work, work, work. Another of our customers, Tom, a customer services manager, said it best. He said, it's like having an extra member of staff that's super fast, super accurate, that doesn't mind getting up at 6 a.m. to start work, which is a perfect way to describe what our bots do. Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about bots themselves, but without getting too technical, because to be honest, I'm not that technical myself. and I just have an amazing team that is. So in the first place, bots are digital and exist only in a virtual sense. They're not physical. You can't see or touch them. You can't really even watch a bot performing its work, but most of the time. Bots are also what we would call non-invasive because they don't need to be integrated into your systems to work on them. And they can access your systems in three main ways to do their work. And those three ways are the user interface, an application interface, and a custom integration. The first of those, the user interface or UI, this is where a bot performs its work by just accessing Salesforce or any other system via the same user interface that you and I would see when we log in. So a bot navigates all the same screens, the same menus, key taps, performs the same shortcuts and mouse moves, pretty much exactly the same way as you and I would. In fact, we set a bot up in very much the same way as you would a new employee, giving them a username and password to access the systems that they would need to work on. This makes bots really fast to set up and make changes to. However, the downside with the UI approach is that, of course, if there's an issue from a UI perspective that we would encounter, the bot will also encounter the same kind of problem. And they could be things like network outages, software bugs, and performance issues. However, the good news is that bots have the advantage of also being able to work via another method, and in the same way that computers do best. And that's by accessing systems and doing their work through the back end using an application program interface, or API for short. Now, APIs are becoming more and more popular, with communities developing applications around them, such as the Salesforce App Exchange, which provides more and more apps to connect with your systems to do more of what you want. However, APIs aren't always the answer, unfortunately, because they're not always available, and those that are don't always do everything that you need them to, such as multi-directional updates back and forth. So the application interface has some limitations too, which brings us on to our third way of bots working with systems, and that's using a custom application or integration, which can be built really very quickly in order to make their work easier, and then they fill in those gaps and app gaps from the user and application interface methods. And even better, bots aren't limited to using only one of those methods. They can use all of them in a single process, switching from one to another fairly seamlessly, should any one of those fail or not be appropriate. Now, these custom interfaces also allow you to insert a person into the process at any point. So a lot of the time we find out that there's still need for a person's interjection into a process, whether it be to make decisions or make approvals. That can be included too, so that the robot will stop, hand back to the person, and then continue on its work again. So this gives users a really big advantage when using and working with bots, because it means you can also optimize the process to a level that you may not have thought possible previously. Now, although we're talking about bots specifically for Salesforce today, no process ever starts and ends in the same place. There are always inputs to and outputs from another process, and these usually involve different types of systems, different people, different departments. And this is another major advantage of using bots, because they're what we would call task agnostic. So unlike bots, we can't realistically be trained to perform every task and every role in the business, but bots can. Not only that, but bots can also switch very seamlessly from one task to another, allowing you to achieve a bit more of that straight-through processing nirvana that's talked about often. And that allows you to then go more end-to-end across departments and teams in order to get a complete process finished better. For instance, we do have bots that work on reports for accounting overnight, downloading them from the ERP system, such as Sage or Xero, and then build the management reports ready for the morning. And then those same bots then start working, processing sales orders or switching back and forth with customer support to manage requests. So then they can start working on HR and payroll and other types of activities in other parts of the business. Okay. So the point is, most people start with a bot working on one particular set of tasks in one process area, but very soon you can expand more and more steps, more and more of the end-to-end process, and into other areas of your business, because the ability of bots to flex and scale. So let's take a look at some real-life examples of some Salesforce bots in action. This is where we've been able to use them to great effect to eliminate manual work. First of these is a typical sales order to invoice process. In its previous manual form, once the sales rep had closed the sales opportunity and updated the status in Salesforce, they didn't have a pre-existing integration with their accounting system, so the rep or someone else had to get all the data they needed to create the sales order. And this was entered manually, usually flicking between screens, this swivel chair type of activity where you enter the data into different screens, or you download a data file and you do an import. And once this was done, the order could then be sent and signed, the sales invoice was raised, and a payment could be processed or set up. So, a typically manual sales order process involving multiple people, each relying on the output from the other as the start of their work, and any errors or mistakes done earlier in the stream cause delays and more manual work downstream. In this particular case, the average was 15 minutes time from closed opportunity into an invoice for payment. When a bot was used instead to perform those swivel chair steps, it eliminated all of the manual work for the sales reps once the opportunity was set to closed won. And then it also eliminated the downstream manual work for sales ops and accounts to process the sales order and invoices without any errors. And without having to download any Excel files or mess around with any spreadsheets or anything like that as well. But with an average of only 30 seconds for the same process to go from closed won to invoice and payment set up, it not only saved the workforce 15 minutes of time overall per closed won opportunity, but the bot then produced an accurate invoice 14.5 minutes faster per order too. It meant the sales reps could then get back to chasing leads and making follow-ups instead. Next example is from the pandemic. It's a great example where bots were used and can be used to very rapidly solve external problems that come up. During the lockdown, the regulators and banks announced a payment holiday on mortgages to help people impacted by COVID-19. This almost immediately resulted in a 30 times increase in customer request volumes from those wanting to take up the offer. An increase that was anticipated, but they needed a way to prepare for handling that expected increase. And there were so many people that were impacted and worried by not being able to pay their mortgages on time. So fortunately, bots could meet this challenge. They were deployed to the bank's mortgage process to manage the workflow of the 30 times magnified of increase in customer requests in the first place, but also to prioritize them for either processing straight through or handing off to an agent to manage the exceptions. But because the bot could connect with Salesforce using both UI and APIs, the bot was ready to be deployed in just over a week and just in time for the start of the applications and those influx of customer requests that they were anticipating. The go live went very smoothly and they were able to make adjustments as they learned more about the types of customers and their unique situations, which also allowed the exceptions to be quickly reduced too, which also meant then that more cases could flow straight through first time. The bots have actually remained in place since then and have been expanded to manage more types of cases, which have made customer services more productive, gives them a better and more frictionless service to their customers. So we're coming near to the end of our webinar, but just before we finish and wrap up and take final questions, I want to share our current top 5 Salesforce bot recipes. Our bot recipes simply are predefined bots built for a specific purpose. Salesforce, in these cases, that can be deployed very quickly to start working on common tasks and eliminate your manual repetitive work. All of our bot recipes are customizable and configurable to suit individual needs and requirements. And this top 5 list is pretty much always changing as new cases come along. But over the past 6 months, these have been our top 5. So starting with Salesforce bot recipe number 5, it's a bot that can add and update your contacts in Salesforce based on any data that you're using, such as newsletters, subscribers, visitors to the website, or online events like LinkedIn, like this one. A bot can make these connections in real time for the source directly, but also our top 5 bot does this from a CSV file or an Excel or any other type, adding new contacts and then validating them too, so that any errors or missing data points can be corrected before they go into the system, which avoids problems. And then, of course, they can be added into your next campaigns. Salesforce bot recipe number 4 is a multi-activity pack, taking care of lots of those very fundamental tasks in Salesforce, such as adding and removing, updating, uploading and downloading, and handling reports and searches, but doing it all automatically. This bot can free up loads of time by performing the very basic repetitive tasks. And although it varies from business to business, we estimate as much as 80% of the manual basic work could be eliminated, possibly more. Next is Salesforce bot recipe number 3, which is an extension of number 4, and it manages even more tasks, especially non-standard ones, those that have a much more complex or customized activity and systems and steps involved. It can be used in conjunction with bot number 4 or in complete isolation. There are no dependencies. Salesforce bot recipe number 2 is also very, very popular. It provides a perfect connection with the Xero accounting system. We've actually got lots of connections with Xero and automations in Xero too. Although we do have bots for connecting Sage, QuickBooks, Iris, and other accounting systems as well. This bot can handle data traveling both to and from both systems and back again as necessary. And it can incorporate other systems and data sources into the process too. For example, we have one particular automation that also includes a separate payroll, standalone payroll and timesheet system. So they include all of those into that as well. This bot overcomes a lot of those app gaps I mentioned before, left from the current APIs between Salesforce and Xero and other systems, but it can also go much further. And finally, in the top spot, bot recipe number 1 is our accelerator bot that is a specialist for working on spreadsheets and reporting, because most businesses simply can't get away from these. They're a necessary evil. Our customers love the bot because it can access any system to retrieve data, but then automatically create really useful, up-to-date information that's properly formatted in a way that users need it, and it's fully customizable too. And it puts the power in the hands of the users as to what they want the bot to do. So, to summarize, there are, as always, very many ways to solve the same problem and the pain points that users have in Salesforce with data integration, data quality, and reporting. The latest, and I think the greatest of these so far, is now bots. Today we've looked at some examples of how this works, a few real-life examples of customers where they've been successful. As a more traditional alternative, of course, you can always look at programming. You can throw people at the problem if you can afford it or find them, which is a challenge these days. Or you can get these custom integrations built, or you can try APIs. If that gives you, of course, what you need at the price you can afford. Or the other alternative is you could give bots a go because they're quick, cost effective, they're customizable, and because the bots are built and hosted for you, there's little to no work for you to create or maintain them for yourself. Now, bots can automate many steps in the sales and services, customer support processes across Salesforce and other systems for a very seamless processing experience. It gives you a faster time to sale and a more frictionless customer experience. Our top 5 bots for Salesforce can eliminate most of the manual work that makes you less productive today. And if and when at all you're ready for a bot, I'd certainly love to talk to you more. But that's all for the webinar today. I want to thank you all for your time. I hope you've heard something that might be helpful. We'll be sharing some additional content afterwards. I think if anyone wants copies of the slides or any of the other materials that we've got, we can email to hi@botsforthat.com. And we're going to finish up by taking questions that we've been submitting online during this. So I'll ask Phil to join me on stage and hand over to you, Phil. Ask questions.
Right, yeah, let's get through some of these questions. First one, Salesforce offers a UiPath addition through the App Exchange. What's the difference between using this to automate my processes as opposed to using bots for that?
Excellent. Okay, good question. So there is a great connector there. It requires some additional licenses, so they'll need additional licenses for the connector platform itself. And then, of course, you'll need some expertise in terms of knowing how to use the bots and build them and build your automations in the way that you need to. But ultimately, once you've done all that, you can run them yourself, absolutely. But we just offer a one-stop shop answer without having to do any of the work, without having to maintain or worry about things changing. So that's the advantage.
How would I go about automating a process? What are the steps involved? As a company looking to automate, what would you need to know?
Okay. So we've we tend to spend a lot of time initially on the understanding the process, because typically when we look at dividing a bot for a process, the very easy approach and straightforward one is make the bot do exactly what the person does today. But actually, when we start that process, we find out that the process owner generally wants to make changes. They're not happy with exactly what works today. And when the opportunities open up with bringing a bot in, they start thinking about ideas and things that they can change and improve. So we tend to make sure that we spend the time understanding what that looks like and what people really need a bot to do at the outset. We use a great system called SCORE with a K, SKORE, which uses something called UPN, Universal Process Notation, which incidentally, I think, it could be correct, but I think Salesforce recommend this as their preferred approach to process mapping. So if that's the case, you'll be off to a great start. Once that automation requirement has been properly defined and the requirements are clear, that gets handed over to the tech team to do their build and the test, and then it comes back to the process owner, and we do some user testing. And once they're happy that it goes into live, and then off it goes, and it runs then in perpetuity for as long as they need.
Do the bots run automatically, or do they have to be supervised by a human?
You can have both, plus actually one other option. So bots can be run as what we call lights out in an unattended mode, and they can run on dates, triggers, events, and other automatic triggers. You can also, a bit like the old days with a macro, hit the run button and you can have it run that way. And you can also have this scenario where a bot will run unattended for the parts that you define. And then where you need to have a human in the loop, a person, to make a decision or make a review of the data, that can be handed off to the human. That work can happen and it can come back into the process and the bot will run off again. So 3 ways actually.
Are there any restrictions in regards to softwares that the robots can integrate with? For example, if we use the software that you haven't mentioned so far, would that still be possible?
The easy answer is yes. I don't think I've come across a system yet that we haven't been able to make a bot work for. In fact, in a few weeks' time, we're doing a similar exercise for HubSpot. I've mentioned Xero, Sage, QuickBooks, and others today. There's very few systems that a bot won't work on. If a human can work on a system today, an application, generally speaking, the bot can too, because it's a power of using UI, API, and customer integrations in order to connect and perform activities.
Got a question from Sean as well that says, is it a subscription or is it a one-time fee?
Glad you asked, Sean. It's a subscription. So no upfront fees, no license fees, no annual costs, just a simple, straightforward subscription for as long as you need it.
How quickly are you able to deploy these bots into a company?
That's the million-dollar question. It depends. And that's the answer that no one wants to hear. On average, when we're doing things like Salesforce, Xero, HubSpot, QuickBooks, Sage, these kind of cloud-based systems, on average, it probably takes between 15 and 30 days to have a fully functioning, live operating bot. At the other end of the scale, we've got some clients that have very bespoke, very custom-made systems, and we could be working on those types of bots for 6 to 8 weeks. It really depends on the systems and the complexities. The thing that normally holds us back is availability to the systems themselves and getting the data we need. But ultimately, it's 15 to 30 days on average.
What would happen if we were to upgrade our version of Salesforce? Would this cause an issue?
Generally not. We try to build bots in a robust way as possible so that when those changes come, and they do, that things don't break. We've got a system in place where they do change, we're able to very rapidly make changes and get things back online again. I think the thing that we tend to find is with release notes, because we've tried this in the past, we tried to get the release notes of the different type of software systems that are in place, and we find out that actually the changes that actually impacted not just the robot, but would have impacted a user too, generally aren't mentioned. So the great thing is, once we find a problem, something stops working, it's within minutes or a couple of hours to get everything fixed and back in process again. So it's the outage time, the maximum outage time is minimized.
Can the bots be used to extract data from documents? Can they read documents essentially?
They can, yeah. We can. A bot can use OCR, image recognition, A cognitive bot, as it's called, that uses machine learning algorithms, without getting too technical, can read patterns and documents, unstructured data, and it can not only read those documents and learn how to read more and more documents in time, but it can also then, of course, extract the data on those documents and use it in one of the processes. So if you had purchase orders, sales quotes, invoices, and different types of documents coming in, the bot effectively could read those, take the data it needs to, and continue on with the process.
The last question we have is, we use QuickBooks and BrightPay. Do your bots work with these softwares?
We do. We have built some QuickBooks and Sage bots. We've actually got several bots on the go right now using BrightPay. BrightPay seems to be now the payroll system of choice. More and more companies are moving to that, away from the payroll systems that, say, Iris and Xero have, because they're just not as good. So BrightPay is becoming almost the system standard, and our bots work really well with them.
Unless we've got any more questions come up in the chat, which I don't think we have. That's all the questions that I've got here.
Okay. Good stuff. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay. So as I said, we've got hi@botsforthat.com is the email address if you want the data sheets, if you want a list of our top 5 Salesforce bots, and also copies of the slides from today or anything else at all. If you want to any follow-up, if you want to ask further questions, if you want to set up a call, if you mail us at hi@botsforthat.com, we'll send you everything you need, and we'll get in touch for follow-up. Thank you, Phil.